There's another way, black shale. Shale will absorb the oil like a sponge, and so shale isn't normally black. If it's black, it almost certainly means there's oil. And so they just literally send out guys just walking around the Middle East looking for where this oil is. In the meantime, the British are starting to anticipate, okay, if we find it, when we find it, we need to have deals in place already. So one of the places that they go to make a deal is Iran. And the reason they're picking Iran is because they figure they have an easy way to get a deal in Iran. And the easy way is this. The rulers, they're called Qajars. The Qajars are really bad opium addicts. I mean, we're talking over-the-top opium addicts. And the reason the British realize they can make this to their advantage is India and Afghanistan were the world's largest opium producers. And this is why the British are so insistent on trade with China, right? Because China had a bunch of stuff that Britain wanted. Britain had nothing that China wanted. So what the Brits did was they hooked the Chinese on opium and then forcibly, right, it was forced them to trade for opium. The reason it was forced is that the Chinese occasionally would go, we don't want to do this anymore, and they would say no more, and then the British and the French and the Germans would invade China, shoot the place up, and say, no, you're going to take our opium. And they would force them to do it. You know this, right, about the British? First tobacco, then opium. They were just like the original drug dealing empire, only they would force you to take drugs. Isn't that crazy? Well, that's why they invaded Afghanistan 3 times. The British Empire invaded Afghanistan 3 times, and all 3 times got beaten. They got beaten and humiliated and driven out of Afghanistan. By the time we invade, Afghanistan's nickname is Graveyard of Empires for a reason. It's not, they were just like flipping through, what could we go with? Like Michigan. Its motto is, if you seek 2 pleasant peninsulas, look about you, or something goofy like that. Yeah, I was thinking peninsula or island. What should I do? Oh, I'll do peninsula this time. I'm bored with islands. I always feel so trapped. Why would anyone seek a peninsula? Anyway, the British figure, even if they're not in Afghanistan at a given moment, they can still get the opium out of Afghanistan, plus they have the opium they're producing in India, and they can just sell it to the rulers of Persia. And they do. They make this deal. And here's the deal. Any oil that the British find in Persia, Britain will get 95% of the revenue. It's Persian oil, but the British will get 95%. This is, in terms of deals, horrible. If they had had even a slightly decent negotiating team, they should have been able to get 50% of the revenue and let the British have 50%. It's Persian oil. The Brits do the thinking. They find it. They do the drilling. But it's still Persian oil. But they get a 95% concession. The British then create the Anglo-Persian Oil Company, APOC. Eventually, when Iran changes its name from Persia to Iran, they rename it the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, the AIOC. What happens shortly afterwards is the Brits find oil in Iran. They find it in a part of Iran called Khuzestan. It's the southwestmost corner of Iran. They find oil and they're like, wow, good thing we already have this 95% concession in place. Good thing we already have the Anglo-Persian Oil Company. We can just go set up shop. Next, the British realize, well, if there's oil in Persia, surely there's oil in other places. And so they start looking around in what is today Iraq. They're walking around Mesopotamia, again, right? You're looking for black shale or hoping to get a squishy sound as you're walking. And they find it. They find it in northern Iraq, in what is today Kurdistan, Iraqi Kurdistan. So now they go to the Ottoman Empire and they go, hey, we'd like to make an oil concession deal with you about the oil that you guys have here. And the Ottoman Empire went, oh, sorry, we already made one with the Germans, Britain's #1 arch rival. The British realize it's a good thing we've got Kuwait, because this is pre-pipeline. When you found oil, you put it on a boat and send it out to sea. So they've got to, if they find oil in northern Iraq, they're going to put the oil on a boat in the Tigris River, and it has to go past Kuwait. So the British see Kuwait as the location that they'll launch an attack on any German shipping leaving the Ottoman Empire should there be a war. And they'll just cut off Germany's oil supply. But again, right, this is still a coal-powered world, so this isn't critical anyway. Not yet. It will be, of course. But the British are thinking down the road. The British and the Germans are eventually going to fight it out. World War I, I'm going to burst a bubble for most of you. It's almost the 100th anniversary, right? It's just around the corner. World War I did not start because the Archduke Ferdinand was assassinated, which I believe we've already done the 100th anniversary of. The Archduke Ferdinand being assassinated triggered a series of events that allowed World War I to come into being, because you have to have a casus belli. It gave them the casus belli. The reason World War I came into being was this. Great Britain and Germany were about to go bankrupt. And the reason they were about to go bankrupt is they were in the world's biggest, nastiest ever, up until that moment, arms race. Building ships. Germany would pop out a battleship, and then the British would build two. The British would build two for two reasons. One, the German battleship was better quality than the British battleship. So if they just built one, it wouldn't match. They had to build at least two. But the other reason was the British didn't want parity with the Germans. They don't want equality. They want superiority. So they figure if we build two, even if the German ship is worth 1.5, we'll maintain our superiority. The problem then is, once the British build two, then the Germans feel like they have to go build another one, which then forced the British to build two more, which then forces the Germans to go build another one, which forced the British to build two more. And the next thing you know, these two countries, all they're doing is building battleships. And at some point, they were going to have to fight it out. They just simply couldn't ignore this anymore. And so they used the Archduke Ferdinand, both states. Both states are equally evil, right? I know you want the Germans to be bad. I have bad news for you. The Brits may have been more evil, up at least until that point. Certainly in terms of the number of people killed, the British are orders of magnitude more evil at that point. Maybe once you throw in World War II, the British aren't as evil. But up until that moment, the British were certainly more evil. In any case, World War I happens, and it's a nasty, vicious affair. And there's some crazy side effects or some crazy consequences. First, let me tell you about the naval conflict, right? The reason they're having World War I is because of this naval arms race. So you would think both fleets, the German Imperial Fleet and the British Royal Navy, they're going to clash and solve this once and for all. And they fight one battle. It's late. I think it was 1917. The German Navy comes out of port, 2-3 years into the war. They're approaching Britain. The British Navy comes out of port. They meet in the North Atlantic. The North Sea. They fight they fire a little bit of shells at each other. The Germans lose their nerve, turn around and start heading back to port. The Germans sank more ships, sank more tonnage, but the British chased the Germans back into port. So the Germans said, we won. The British said, we won. The reality was it was a big stalemate because the German Navy was intact. The British lost more ships, but the Germans failed to stay at sea. So they both lost. Neither side won, and that was it. That's how the war ends in terms of Navy battles. And the German Navy gets cut to pieces because they lose the war. So there's no actual resolution of this big naval thing that they were putting so much money and effort into. Irony of human stupidity, right? Just at least fight it until they all sink. At least make this worthwhile. You're going to kill 12.5 million people on land. At least have a big naval slugfest and do this right instead of whatever that nonsense was. The big consequence, though, for U.S. foreign policy purposes is this. Well, before I do that one, let me do the other one. It also pulls us into the industrial mass export business. Because when Germany, France, and Great Britain stopped producing goods to sell to the rest of the world because they're now producing, they took those factories and now they're producing weapons, right? Instead of producing shirts, they're now producing uniforms. Instead of producing cars, they're now producing tanks. Because Germany and Great Britain and France, the three big industrial powers, do this, it allows us, with all our industrial might, to just move into those markets. So now we've got a big share of the global export market.